You learn the hard way, not through books, not through quotes, but through wounds, through friendships that rot from the inside, through lovers who kiss you while slowly erasing your self-worth, through family who smile with their lips and cut with their silence, through betrayals that don't come from enemies, but from the ones you swore would never hurt you. And somewhere along the way, you begin to realize something Carl Jung tried to warn us about. The most dangerous people in your life are not the ones who yell, or cheat, or even manipulate. They are the ones who refuse to see themselves, because a person who won't face their own shadow will spend their entire life projecting it onto you. You will carry their guilt, their blame, their fear, their failure. You will hold what they refuse to hold until one day your body breaks, or your mind does, but not today. Today we start pulling the mask off, because this isn't just a list of personality types. This is a map, a guide to reclaiming your sovereignty. And we're not doing it from judgment, we're doing it from survival. So as you listen, I want you to do two things. First, ask yourself who in your life matches these patterns. And second, harder, ask which of these patterns might live inside you. Because this isn't about running from danger, it's about recognizing when you've made danger feel like home. Let's begin. Type 1, the Guiltgiver. This person never asks directly. They don't need to. They sigh just loud enough. They pause long enough for you to notice. They leave subtle hooks in every sentence. And you're the one who ends up volunteering your time, your energy, your soul. You leave every conversation wondering why you feel heavy, like you owe them something, like they were the victim, even when you were the one bleeding. This is the art of psychological guilt. They don't blame you outright. They just frame it that way. They paint themselves as the fragile one, the misunderstood, the always giving, never receiving saint. But behind their helplessness is a weapon, emotional control disguised as need. Jung would call this the unconscious shadow in motion. They don't know they're doing it, but that doesn't make it any less dangerous, because guilt, when repeated long enough, becomes identity. And once you believe you're responsible for someone else's emotions, you're no longer free. You're a puppet. Cut the strings. Type 2, the chronic victim. Life has been unfair to them. Always. Everyone has done them wrong. Nothing is ever their fault. Every ex was toxic. Every job was abusive. Every friend was a betrayer. You offer advice. They dismiss it. You offer help. They reject it. But what they crave is attention. And if that attention dries up, they'll create a new crisis to refill the cup. This person doesn't want healing. Healing would mean responsibility. And responsibility would mean they can no longer blame the world. Carl Jung called this the inferior function dominating the personality. When the weakest part of us demands center stage, it's like someone walking around with a broken bone and refusing a cast, because the limp gets them sympathy. But here's what makes this type so harmful. They slowly train you to lower your standards for behavior, to make excuses, to normalize dysfunction. Until you forget what healthy even looks like. You begin to think love always feels like saving someone. That pain is the price of closeness. That being drained is just part of being good. It's not. Compassion does not require self-destruction. Watch how you feel after a conversation with them. If every talk becomes a therapy session, if every celebration gets redirected back to their suffering, you're not in a friendship. You're in a hostage exchange. Let go of what's not yours to carry. Type 3, the Subtle Sabotur. They're not cruel, they're supportive, on the surface. They'll say they're happy for you, but something in their tone tightens. They'll celebrate your win, but immediately compare it to their own journey. They'll say, "That's amazing," then follow with, "Must be nice." This is envy in a mask. This is unhealed inadequacy dressed up as passive encouragement, and it's dangerous because it doesn't look like harm. It looks like friendship. It sounds like love. But underneath, it's a war. Jung believed that those who suppress their shadow become bitter at those who don't. Your growth offends their stagnation. Your peace threatens their chaos. Your joy reminds them of what they abandoned in themselves. So they won't attack you directly. They'll minimize, subtly mock. Drop seeds of doubt. Are you sure this is sustainable? You've changed. Don't get too confident. Every line seems harmless, but over time they hollow you out. You stop dreaming as big. You second-guess yourself more. You shrink to fit the version of you they can tolerate. But don't make yourself small to soothe someone else's discomfort. You're not responsible for protecting someone from their envy. Let them sit with it. Sometimes it's not the obvious wounds that do the most damage. It's the quiet erosion, the slow daily leaking of energy that you can't quite explain. And it always starts the same way, with someone who seems harmless, supportive, warm, empathetic even. But Jung warned us, the shadow doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, and it uses your empathy against you. Let's continue. Type 4. The charm mirror. At first they seem like everything you've ever wanted. They listen, they agree, they reflect your thoughts, your values, your dreams. You feel seen, you feel understood. But pay close attention. Their opinions shift depending on who's in the room. Their identity seems fluid, too perfect, too tailored. And when you start to notice the inconsistencies, they deflect. Why are you being so negative? You're imagining things. I thought you trusted me. This is not connection. This is mirroring. A manipulation tactic, conscious or not, that builds dependence. Because once you feel deeply seen by someone, you begin to need their presence to feel whole. Jung would call this identification with the persona, where someone wears a mask so well, they forget it's not real. But it is not love when someone only reflects you. Love requires an honest self. And when you remove your needs from the mirror, you'll often find there's nothing, and no one behind it. You weren't loved. You were studied. Withdraw your projection. Reclaim your vision. Type 5. The silent competitor. You've probably met this one before. The friend who never seems to outright sabotage you, but somehow your wins always come with their discomfort. You get a promotion. They go quiet. You start a new relationship. They remind you of its risks. You share a dream. They laugh, just a little too long. And if you call it out, they say you're too sensitive, that it's just a joke, that they do support you. Can't you take a little teasing? But teasing isn't harmless when it's a cover for resentment. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That applies here, because this person doesn't hate you. They hate that your progress reflects where they've stalled. Your light isn't their enemy, but it exposes their shadow, and instead of facing it, they try to dim you down, just enough to feel safe again. Don't play small to preserve the fragile ego of someone else. That's not friendship. That's a competition you didn't sign up for. And it's not your job to lose on purpose just so someone else can tolerate the scoreboard. Type 6. The energy leech. They don't yell, they don't criticize, they don't even disagree. They just drain you. You walk away from every interaction exhausted, mentally fogged, emotionally flat, and you can't explain why. Because nothing bad happened. They were nice. They were just venting. They were just needing a little support. But it's never just once. It's every time. This person is not interested in solutions. They're not seeking growth. They're seeking a vessel. Someone to carry the weight they refuse to hold. Someone to fill the emptiness they pretend doesn't exist. Someone to plug the leak they refuse to repair. Jung called this psychic parasitism, where the unconscious of one person invades the psyche of another, feeding off their attention, their empathy, their light. And here's the thing no one wants to admit. You can love someone deeply and still know they are not safe to your nervous system. You can have compassion without offering your soul as a sponge. This type doesn't need your energy. They need your absence to finally hear the echo of their own emptiness. And maybe, just maybe, begin to heal it themselves. Don't confuse being a good person with being a dumping ground. You are not a landfill for other people's unresolved trauma. Now pause here. Because if you're feeling a strange discomfort right now, if you're seeing faces, hearing voices in your memory, if you're realizing that some of these people weren't just acquaintances, but lovers, mentors, best friends, you're not alone. And you're not wrong. One of Jung's greatest teachings was this: you meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it. Sometimes we attract these personalities not because we're broken, but because our shadow wants us to finally see the pattern, so we can break it. But you can't break a pattern you won't name, so let's get honest. Which of these types have you kept in your life out of guilt, out of habit, out of fear that if you let go you'll be alone? Leave a comment below, because naming it is power, and someone else might read your words and finally name theirs too. If you're still with me, you're ready for the final shift. Because the next section isn't about them, it's about you, your shadows, your blind spots, your potential to become the very thing you once ran from. Let's keep going. By now, you've probably seen some of these people in your life. But let me ask you something harder. Have you seen them in yourself? Because if Jung taught us anything, it's this. The people we're most disturbed by are often reflections of our unintegrated self. What you reject externally is usually a mirror of what you're afraid to confront internally. And so this section isn't just about the people to avoid, it's about the roles you might unknowingly play when pain goes unexamined and ego steps in to protect what the heart never got to process. Let's continue. Type 7, the quiet controller. This is the person who doesn't scream, doesn't command. They orchestrate, silently, through guilt, through subtle implications, through the way they withdraw love like a punishment. They don't say you disappointed me. They just get quiet, colder, and wait for you to feel it. They weaponize emotional absence. And here's the terrifying truth. Most people don't even know they're doing this, because in childhood they learned that control was the only way to stay emotionally safe. So they became masters of environment, puppeteers of closeness. But when closeness is earned through guilt, what you have isn't love, it's hostage negotiation. Jung warned that control is a mask the fearful wear when they were never taught to trust the flow of life or the autonomy of others. So if you find yourself monitoring people's tone, keeping mental score, withdrawing affection instead of setting boundaries, you're not evil. You're protecting something tender, but now you have a choice. Keep orchestrating others, or finally turn inward and reparent the part of you that needed control just to feel safe. Type 8, the self-sacrificing martyr. You've met them. Maybe you've been them. Always helping, always giving, always saying yes. And yet, there's a bitterness behind their kindness, a silent tally being kept. They never ask for help, but quietly resent those who don't offer it. They never speak their needs, but expect others to read their suffering like scripture. They confuse neglect with virtue, exhaustion with purpose. Jung would say, whatever you repress, you project. And in this case, they repress anger, but project disappointment. They repress desire, but project obligation. They believe they're being good, but what they're really being is invisible. Self-sacrifice is only sacred when it's a choice, not a compulsion. So if you find yourself helping everyone but feeling empty, if you feel like you give and no one sees you, maybe it's because you haven't truly seen yourself yet. Ask, what if I stopped rescuing others long enough to rescue myself? Type 9, the wounded performer. This one is hard because they seem like they're thriving. The achiever, the charismatic one, the one who always seems put together. But watch closely, and you'll see it's not presence, it's performance. They're constantly scanning for approval, reading the room, adjusting their energy to be liked, admired, wanted. It's not narcissism, it's survival. Because somewhere in their story, love became conditional. Smile, and you'll be accepted. Achieve, and you'll be safe. Perform, and maybe someone will stay. Jung called this identification with the persona. When you fuse with the mask so completely, you forget there's a real person underneath. So if you find yourself exhausted after social interactions, if you fear stillness because you don't know who you are without the performance, that's not weakness. That's the shadow, calling you home. Because the mask may win you applause, but only the real self can be loved. Let's pause here, because this is where most people turn back. It's easier to say, I don't have these traits. It's easier to say, this is about them. But Jung's work wasn't about comfort. It was about confrontation. And here's the deepest truth he left us with. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege requires you to stop being who you became, just to survive. So take a breath, scan your life, not just your relationships, but your roles, the fixer, the pleaser, the controller, the martyr, the chameleon. These weren't flaws, they were strategies. But strategies can become prisons when they go unexamined, and you're not here to live a life of quiet resentment, endless exhaustion, and shallow connection. You're here to wake up, and waking up means seeing the shadows in yourself without shame. Just clarity. If something hit you in this section, a habit, a pattern, a role you've played too long, drop it in the comments, not for validation, but for liberation. Because once you name it, it can no longer run your life from the dark. We're not done yet. In the final chapters, we'll explore how to protect your soul without hardening your heart, how to forgive without reopening the door, and how to finally reclaim the self that was buried beneath the roles. If you've made it this far, you're ready. Let's finish what we started. Some people walk into your life like open doors. They speak plainly. Their energy feels safe. You don't have to guess who they are. Others? They're puzzles. Masks layered over masks. And every time you get close, they shift. Not because they're evil, because they're terrified of being seen. And this is where it gets dangerous, because the more time you spend around them, the more you begin to doubt your own clarity. Your gut says something's off, but they speak like saints. Your instincts whisper something's wrong, but your brain overrules it. This section is about them, the dangerous ones, not loud in the obvious way, but quietly corrosive to your sanity, your center, your soul. Type 10. The reality twister. You say something. They deny it. You bring up a memory. They rewrite it. You call out a pattern. They accuse you of being sensitive. Over time, you stop trusting yourself. You replay conversations like crime scenes. You wonder if you're the problem. This is not miscommunication. This is manipulation. Jung described this as psychic contamination, when one person's unresolved shadow spills into your perception of reality. And the scariest part? They don't always know they're doing it. They lie so deeply to themselves that they truly believe the fiction. But if you stay around them too long, you'll begin to abandon your truth just to maintain the relationship. That's the price. So if someone consistently makes you feel crazy, confused, or overly emotional for bringing up what you know happened, walk away. No explanation needed, just your exit. Because your peace isn't worth sacrificing on the altar of someone else's illusion. Type 11. The empathy thief. They mimic your pain. They echo your language. They say, "I understand," with soft eyes and calm tones. But something's missing. Presence. Because when you open up, they find a way to bring it back to themselves. Their pain is always louder. Their story always bigger. You feel like you're sharing, but somehow you're always holding space for them. This person doesn't just lack empathy. They consume it. They mistake your vulnerability for an opportunity to center themselves. And while they may appear supportive, they are emotionally extractive. You leave interactions more drained than seen, more used than understood. Jung warned that those disconnected from their inner world often seek emotional supply through others. They feed on connection, but give nothing real back. You are not selfish for noticing this. You are awake, because empathy should feel like mutual breath, not suffocation. Type 12. The spiritual mask. This is the trickiest one, because they wear the language of healing. They quote Rumi, they meditate, they talk about energy, alignment, detachment. But beneath the sage-scented surface, they are using spirituality to escape responsibility. They don't apologize, they send light. They don't confront, they rise above. They don't own harm. They blame your vibration. This isn't growth. It's avoidance dressed as enlightenment. Jung called this spiritual bypassing, the use of metaphysical language to suppress emotional maturity. It sounds holy. It feels hollow. These are the people who will hurt you, then tell you it's your lesson. They will ignore accountability and wrap it in cosmic poetry. But healing without honesty is just self-deception in prettier clothes. So when someone refuses to own their behavior because they've transcended drama, what they're really doing is hiding behind a higher self they haven't actually met. So what do? You set boundaries. Not just with your time, but with your energy. You don't argue with illusions. You don't beg for clarity from someone who profits off confusion. You stop trying to heal people who are committed to staying unwell, especially when your healing becomes their fuel. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity, because there's a fine line between compassion and self-abandonment. Jung said it clearly. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and the most dangerous people are often those who haven't. So instead of trying to fix them, save them, understand them, ask, what part of me still believes I have to earn love by tolerating confusion? What version of me still thinks silence is peace? Who taught me that care means enduring? Because the longer you stay around people who twist, absorb, or disguise harm, the more you disconnect from your inner compass. And here's what I want you to know. Your intuition isn't dramatic. Your feelings aren't an inconvenience. Your limits aren't flaws. They are the map back to you. So if you've seen any of these people in your orbit, or if you've played one of these roles at some point, name it. Not to shame yourself, but to end the cycle. Drop it in the comments. Start your own mirror. And if you're finding your voice again through this, subscribe, because the next section will go even deeper. We're not done. Next, we reclaim your sovereignty, not just by avoiding dangerous people, but by becoming someone who is no longer attracting them. Let's close the loop. At some point in your life, someone taught you that love must be earned, that silence is safer than truth, that you should endure, tolerate, explain, absorb, just to keep the peace. They taught you wrong. And if you're still here, still watching, still listening, it means something inside you is done. Done repeating, done shrinking, done blaming yourself for other people's shadows. This isn't just a warning about dangerous people, it's an initiation into your own power. Because the real danger isn't just who you let in, it's who you become when you silence your truth to keep them there. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." But what happens when you finally face yours? You stop begging for bare minimum love. You stop tolerating inconsistent energy. You stop explaining your worth to people addicted to misunderstanding you. And you realize, you were never powerless. You were trained to forget. So now let's flip the lens. You know how to spot them. But now, can you see yourself clearly? Let me ask you the harder questions. Have you ever stayed in a friendship because you were afraid of being alone? Have you ever kept the peace by betraying your needs? Have you ever called someone difficult just because they held up a mirror? This is the shadow work. Not just spotting others' patterns, but seeing how your wounds once made you a match for them. Jung believed the unconscious will rule your life until you make it conscious. And until you face it, really face it, you will keep attracting people who are rehearsing the very pain you never spoke aloud. But once you become aware, the game changes. You don't have to cut people off with fire. You can just quietly stop dancing the same choreography. You don't have to confront every mask. You can just walk away from the stage entirely. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the calm refusal to carry what isn't yours anymore. Let's make this real. Here's what stepping into your sovereignty looks like. You meet someone who manipulates subtly, and instead of spiraling, you name it to yourself, and step back with clarity. You feel someone draining your energy with emotional demands, and instead of over-explaining, you withdraw with compassion and reclaim your time. You sense the charm of a spiritual performer, but instead of falling for the words, you watch the actions, and choose truth over poetry. You don't need to expose them, you just need to stop abandoning yourself. This is what no one tells you. Healing doesn't always feel like light. It feels like loneliness at first, like silence after a storm, like doubting every step because it's new ground. But stay with it, because there is a version of you on the other side who no longer attracts people who drain you, because you no longer drain yourself to be loved. There is a version of you who can sit in their own energy without needing to fix, save, explain, or shrink. There is a version of you who can walk away in peace, not to punish, but to protect your rebirth. That version is already waking up, right now, in this moment. So here's your final practice. Look back on every dangerous person you've met, not with resentment, but with understanding. Ask yourself, what were they reflecting back to me about my own wounds? What did I learn about my boundaries? What part of me did I reclaim after letting them go? Because they weren't just people, they were teachers, painful ones, but teachers nonetheless. And now you know. The most dangerous people aren't evil caricatures. They're often just unconscious, lost in their own storm, dragging others in without knowing how to stop. But you have the choice to stop dancing in other people's chaos. You have the right to leave confusion behind and walk in clarity, even if it means walking alone for a while. You have the power to become someone who no longer needs to decode chaos, because you live in peace now. So if this video resonated, don't just reflect, act. Comment below. Which type hit you hardest? Which one have you seen in others, or in yourself? Let this be your declaration, your mirror, your moment. And if you want more content that doesn't just inform but transforms, subscribe. Because this channel isn't about surface advice, it's about awakening. No more confusion disguised as compassion. No more self-abandonment in the name of understanding. No more hiding your clarity to make others comfortable. You're done carrying what broke you. This is the first moment of your freedom. Now walk.